My boyfriend admitted he cheated. I needed a traditional woman, he smirked. Someone who knows how to take care of a man, who cooks, cleans, and doesn't challenge me. My friends took his side. I just smiled, took my keys, and left. This morning my phone blew up with 32 missed calls. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs through the last few months of our relationship, but when you've been with someone for 3 years, you tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. At least that's what I kept telling myself. I remember the exact moment Chris's phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a Tuesday evening, and we were halfway through some forgettable cooking show. The sharp vibration cut through the room, and the screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize. Maria, from accounting. Chris's whole body tensed. He reached for the phone too quickly, angling the screen away from me as if shielding a secret. It started with small things. Chris began working late more often, which wasn't unusual during busy seasons. But then came the new cologne I didn't recognize, clothes I'd never seen before appearing in our closet, and his phone suddenly becoming this sacred object that was never more than an arm's length away. For weeks, I'd been brushing off little things. His sudden obsession with privacy, passwords on his laptop, his phone always face down, the way he'd step out of the room to take calls. I told myself he was just stressed about his promotion. But that night, when I asked about Maria, his hesitation was like a crack in the facade. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. I'm not the jealous type, never have been, but something felt off. The way he'd pull away when I tried to hug him from behind while he was texting, how he'd step out to take calls, claiming they were work-related, the constant guys' nights with people whose names I'd never heard before. Last Tuesday, I was folding laundry when his phone lit up on the coffee table. A message preview from Maria popped up. Miss you already. Last night was. The rest was cut off, but my stomach dropped. I didn't want to be that girl who snoops through her boyfriend's phone, but the universe seemed to be screaming at me to wake up. 3 days later, I couldn't keep pretending. I woke up with a knot in my stomach, knowing I had to confront him. When he got home that night, I decided to be direct. He was in the kitchen making himself a protein shake like nothing was wrong. The sound of the blender filled our apartment as I leaned against the door frame, watching him. "Who's Maria?" I asked when he finally turned it off. The change in his posture was instant. His shoulders tensed. But then he did something I wasn't expecting. He smiled. Not his usual warm smile, but something cold and almost triumphant. "Wondering when you'd finally catch on, Sophia," he said, taking a sip from his glass. "Maria is my colleague, and yes, I've been sleeping with her for the past 2 months." The casual way he said it felt like a slap. No guilt, no shame, just pride. I needed a traditional woman, he continued, smirking. Someone who knows how to take care of a man, who cooks, cleans, and stays in her lane. Not someone who spends her weekends at brunch with Taylor and watching stupid reality shows. I stood there, processing his words. 3 years together, and this was how he really saw me. Through the shock, I felt something else rising. Not anger, but a strange sense of clarity. "Does Marcus know?" I asked, thinking of our mutual friend who'd introduced us. "Oh, he's known for weeks," Chris laughed. "Most of our friends know. They understand. Maria can actually support my ambitions, not just dreams and excuses." That hit harder than the cheating admission. These people we'd shared birthdays, holidays, and countless dinners with. They'd all been watching this happen, probably laughing behind my back. I pulled out my phone and opened my group chat with Taylor and Marcus. "Is this true? You all knew?" Taylor's response came quickly. "Girl, you're great, but Chris deserves someone more traditional. Don't take it personally." Marcus chimed in. "We didn't want to hurt you, but maybe this is the wake-up call you need." I looked up from my phone to find Chris watching me, that same smirk still playing on his lips. He was waiting for the explosion, the drama, the scene he could tell everyone about later. Poor, immature Sophia losing her cool. Something inside me broke then, not in anger, but in sheer exhaustion. Instead, I smiled, a real, genuine smile that seemed to catch him off guard. Without a word, I walked to our bedroom, pulled out my go bag, always kept one packed for weekend trips, grabbed my laptop and my keys. When I passed through the kitchen again, Chris was staring, his smirk faltering slightly. "Where are you going?" he demanded. "Out," I replied simply. "And Chris, keep the apartment. I'm sure you can afford it all on your own, Mr. Provider." I heard him start to say something as I closed the door behind me, but I didn't stop to listen. My phone was already buzzing with messages, probably from our so-called friends trying to explain themselves. The quiet of my car was a strange relief. As I drove away, I turned my phone off and felt something I didn't expect. Relief. Sometimes losing everything shows you exactly what you never had in the first place. I had no idea where I was going, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was heading in the right direction. Update. First, thanks for all the support on my last post. Never expected it to blow up like that. A lot has happened in the past week, and honestly, I'm still processing everything. I've been staying at this small motel on the outskirts of town. Not the most glamorous place, but it's clean, and the owner, an older woman who introduced herself as Patty, seems decent. She even knocked $20 off the weekly rate when she heard my story. Turned my phone back on after 2 days of silence. 14 missed calls, 63 text messages, most from Chris, some from Taylor and Marcus, and a few from numbers I didn't recognize. But what really caught my attention was the notification storm from social media. Chris had been busy, really busy. His Instagram story painted a picture I didn't recognize. Apparently, I was a controlling, jealous girlfriend who monitored his every move. According to his posts, I emotionally manipulated him for years, isolated him from friends, and threw a violent tantrum when he finally finally stood up for himself. Each post had hundreds of sympathetic comments, including ones from people I thought were my friends. The crown jewel, a tearful video where he claimed I had financially abused him by making him split all our bills 50-50 while I hoarded my money. Rich, considering he earned more than me and insisted on that split, even though he claims wanting a trad life was the reason he cheated. Then came the text from Olivia, a coworker I've known for years. Hey, you might want to check your email. Something's going around the office about you. Sure enough, there was a company-wide email about creating a safe workplace environment, with a thinly veiled reference to recent concerning behaviors from certain employees. No names mentioned, but the timing wasn't subtle. I should have been angry. Maybe I should have fought back, posted my side of the story. Instead, I just felt curious. How far would he take this? Pretty far, as it turns out. Yesterday, I stopped by our local coffee shop, the one place I figured would be safe since Chris hated their coffee. Wrong. The barista, who'd always been friendly, gave me this look like I was something stuck to her shoe. Later found out Chris had become a regular there, sharing his survival story with anyone who'd listen. But here's where it gets interesting. While picking up some clothes from storage, I ran into Nathan, Chris's supposed best friend. He looked nervous, glancing around like he was afraid of being seen talking to me. You need to be careful, he whispered. Maria isn't just his colleague. Her husband, he's connected, like really connected. And Chris has been telling him you're unstable, dangerous even. Why are you telling me this? Nathan's eyes darted around again. Because this isn't the first time. Before you, there was another girl at work. Chris and Maria, they did the same thing to her. She ended up leaving town. That conversation changed everything. I spent the night digging. Legal records, social media, anything I could find. Turns out the previous girl existed. Vanessa, something, disappeared completely from social media around the time Chris started at the company. This morning, I got a call from our landlord. Chris tried to remove my name from the lease, claiming I'd abandoned the property. When that didn't work, he told him I'd been threatening him. He called to warn me. Turned out his sister went through something similar years ago. But here's the real kicker. While all this was happening, I got a message request on Instagram from an account I didn't recognize. The profile picture was of a man in his 40s, elegant, wearing an expensive suit. The message was simple. I believe we need to talk about my wife and your boyfriend. Coffee tomorrow? It was signed Mr. Davis. I'm meeting him in an hour. Something tells me Chris's traditional woman story is about to get a lot more complicated. The funny thing is, watching Chris spin this elaborate web of lies, seeing our friends choose sides based on nothing but his word, it's actually liberating. Every nasty post, every fake tear, every manipulated story just confirms what I already knew. I'm not losing anything worth keeping. Update 2. Sorry for the delayed update. These past 2 weeks have been wild. That coffee meeting with Mr. Davis? Game changer. The message notification had popped up at 2:37 a.m. from an account with no profile picture. I'd been lying awake for hours, scrolling through Vanessa's old messages when my phone buzzed. My first thought was that this was some kind of trap, maybe Chris testing me. But then I paused. Why would Chris go to such lengths? Something about the tone felt different, more urgent. I replied cautiously, asking how I could be sure who he was. His response came quickly. A photo of Maria's wedding band, unmistakable from company photos. That was enough. We arranged to meet the next day at a coffee shop 30 minutes from our offices. He insisted on somewhere neutral, somewhere we wouldn't be recognized. Mr. Davis looked exhausted when I arrived. He was already seated in a corner booth, a manila folder on the table in front of him. Up close, he was older than I expected, early 40s, with faint lines around his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept properly in months. He didn't bother with small talk. How much do you know? He asked, his voice low but steady. I told him everything. Chris's confession, the smear campaign, what Nathan had revealed about Vanessa. His expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened around his coffee cup. When I finished, he slid the folder across the table. Then you should see this. Inside were months of credit card statements, highlighted in yellow. Charges for restaurants near our office during lunch breaks Chris had claimed were work meetings. Hotel receipts from weekends he'd supposedly been visiting his parents. Screenshots of text messages between Maria and Chris, time-stamped during meetings they'd both attended. The most damning was a series of Uber receipts showing trips to the same hotel every Thursday for the past 6 months. Turns out he's been gathering evidence for months, not just about Chris and his wife, but about a whole pattern of behavior at the company. Remember how Nathan mentioned the girl who left town? She wasn't the first. Mr. Davis had documented at least 3 similar situations over the past 5 years. Young employees getting involved with his wife, then helping to push out anyone who might expose them. Mr. Davis had been planning his move carefully. He wanted custody of their kids in the coming divorce, and he needed irrefutable proof of Maria's infidelity. But after hearing about Vanessa, and now me, he realized this was bigger than their marriage. They're predators, he said quietly, and they'll keep doing this unless someone stops them. The difference this time, Mr. Davis was done playing quiet. He had texts, emails, expense reports, even security footage from the company parking garage. But he wanted one final piece: public exposure. That's where the annual company party came in. I thought about the company party coming up in 2 weeks. Everyone would be there. Chris, Maria, all the colleagues who'd taken their side. Mr. Davis looked at me, and I knew we were thinking the same thing. We could expose them, I said, publicly. He nodded slowly. I have everything we'd need. Emails, receipts, even some recordings. We spent the rest of the afternoon planning. We'd wait until the party was in full swing, when everyone was gathered in one room. Mr. Davis would handle the technical side, getting access to the AV system, making sure the evidence would display clearly. My job was to get Vanessa there. Sometimes, he told me, the best revenge is just letting people show their true colors. As we stood to leave, Mr. Davis hesitated. You should know, this might get ugly. They won't go down quietly. I thought about Chris's smug expression when he told me our friends knew about the affair. The way he'd leaned back on the couch like he he'd already won. Good, I said. Let it be ugly. I wore red that night for a reason. Let them remember who brought the fire. The party was at this fancy hotel downtown. I arrived late with Mr. Davis, dressed better than I ever had for these things. The company party was in full swing. The room was dimly lit, the air buzzing with chatter and bursts of laughter. Glasses clinked, and the faint hum of music underscored the conversations. As we stepped in, the energy shifted. Heads turned, conversations faltered, and I felt the weight of dozens of eyes locking onto us. The looks when I walked in, priceless. Chris nearly dropped his drink. Maria's face went from red to white so fast I thought she might pass out. Near the buffet table, Chris spotted us. His expression flickered, surprise, then smug satisfaction. He straightened his tie, his lips curling into a condescending smile as he approached. "Sophia," he said, his voice dripping with mock concern. "You shouldn't be here." Behind him, Maria froze mid-conversation, her champagne glass hovering near her mouth, her face a mask of forced composure. But here's the beautiful part. I didn't have to do anything. Marcus approached first, clearly tipsy. "You've got some nerve showing up here," he slurred, loud enough for nearby groups to hear. "After everything you put Chris through?" I just smiled. "Everything I put him through? That's interesting. Tell me more." That's when Olivia stepped in. Remember her? My coworker? Turns out she'd been quietly collecting her own evidence. Screenshots of Chris bragging about his conquest in company chat groups, recordings of him planning how to spin the story with Maria. "Actually," Olivia announced, "I think we'd all like to hear the real story." Mr. Davis didn't waste a second. He strode to the AV station in the corner, where a slideshow of vacation photos and team-building exercises played on a loop. With a few clicks, the screen went black. A murmur rippled through the room, the kind of uneasy silence that comes before a storm. Then the screen lit up again, and the cracks in their carefully polished facade began to show. The next hour was like watching dominoes fall. Hotel receipts appeared first, dates and locations highlighted in yellow. Text message screenshots followed, time-stamped during work hours. Uber receipts showing trips to the same hotel every Thursday. The evidence was damning, each piece a hammer blow to their credibility. The chatter died completely. Someone gasped when a particularly explicit message appeared on the screen. Chris's face drained of color, his smugness evaporating in an instant. Maria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. The sharp sound jolted the room, breaking the stunned silence. Mr. Davis stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Some of you know me as Maria's husband. What you don't know is that for the past 8 months, my wife has been having an affair with Chris." He gestured to the screen. "This isn't just about betrayal, it's about a pattern of manipulation." The room buzzed with murmurs, but they quieted again as Vanessa appeared in the doorway. I'd almost forgotten how striking she was, tall with curly hair pulled into a tight bun. Her presence commanded attention, and the whispers grew louder as people recognized her. She walked straight to the front of the room, her shoulders back, her voice steady. "My name is Vanessa Torres," she said. "I used to work here until Chris and Maria made it impossible." But the real show came from Taylor, who'd been filming everything on her phone, planning to show it to Maria later, prove her loyalty or something. Instead, she managed to capture Chris's complete meltdown. "You think you're so clever?" he screamed at me. "You and that bitter old man trying to ruin everything I've built. Maria loves me. We're going to have a life together." That's when Mr. Davis decided to share the cherry on top. Divorce papers already filed. Turns out Maria had been promising Chris the same future she'd promised those other employees. Same script, different actor. The dominoes began to fall. Vanessa described how they'd isolated her, turned colleagues against her, and fabricated complaints to HR. As she spoke, I saw recognition dawn on several faces in the crowd. Nathan stood up suddenly. "I can confirm that," he said. "Chris showed me texts where they joked about pushing Vanessa out." Then came more revelations. A junior designer named Luis shared how Maria had sabotaged his project after he rejected her advances. Another coworker recalled Chris badmouthing me weeks before I even knew about the affair. Each new voice added weight to the accusations, and with every word, Chris and Maria seemed to shrink further into themselves, their confidence crumbling. Nathan, who'd been quiet all evening, finally spoke up. "I helped him," he admitted, addressing the now silent room. "I helped him destroy that other girl's reputation. I can't do it again." By midnight, the party was effectively over. Chris had stormed out, tears streaming down his face. Maria was locked in her office with HR, and those friends who'd been so quick to believe his stories, they couldn't look me in the eye. As I was leaving, Mr. Davis caught my arm. "Thank you," he said, "for being the one who didn't run." I drove home to my motel room feeling strangely peaceful. Patty was still up, watching late-night TV in the office. She took one look at my face and grinned. "Good night? You could say that." This morning, my phone's been blowing up again. Different tone this time. Apologies, explanations, people claiming they never really believed Chris's stories. Even got a message from Vanessa, who'd been following everything through mutual connections. Sometimes karma doesn't need our help. It just needs an audience. Final update. Well, this is it. The final chapter of this saga, and trust me, it's been a hell of a ride. You might want to grab some popcorn for this one. First off, the aftermath of the company party hit harder than anyone expected. Within 48 hours, both Maria and Chris were asked to resign. But that was just the beginning. Remember those documents Mr. Davis had collected? Turns out there was more. Much more. Every expense report Maria had falsified to cover her business dinners with Chris. Every email where they plotted against other employees. Every manipulated performance review. He handed it all to the board of directors. The company's legal team moved fast. Really fast. They were less concerned about the affairs and more worried about the pattern of workplace harassment and financial misconduct. Both Maria and Chris are now facing civil lawsuits. But here's where it gets interesting. Remember Vanessa, the girl who left town? She came back, and she brought receipts. Literal and figurative. Turns out she documented everything before she left, including the smear campaign Chris and Maria ran against her. She She just hadn't known what to do with it all until now. Mr. Davis introduced her to his lawyer. 3 days later, she filed her own lawsuit. Then something beautiful happened. Other former employees started coming forward, each with their own stories, their own evidence. What started as one scandal quickly became an avalanche. Chris tried to get ahead of it. He posted a tearful video claiming he was the real victim, manipulated by Maria and now being persecuted. That's when Nathan finally grew a spine. He posted the screenshots of their private chats, the ones where Chris bragged about his conquests and planned how to destroy people's reputations, the ones where he mocked his victims. Last week, Chris showed up at my motel. Patty, the owner, called me at work. "That boy you told me about? He's making a scene in the parking lot." I took my time driving back. Found him sitting on the hood of my car, eyes puffy, clutching a manila envelope. "I have dirt on everyone," he said, trying to sound threatening despite his shaking voice. "If you don't help me stop this, I'll release it all." The parking garage was eerily quiet. Chris paced in front of me, his dress shoes scraping against the concrete. "You think you've won?" he spat. "I have dirt on half the people in that room. If I go down, I'm taking everyone with me." His eyes were wild, his breathing uneven. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I'd forgotten I'd left the voice recorder running since leaving the party. Chris didn't notice. He kept ranting, his threats growing more explicit. When he finally paused for breath, I simply said, "No." The words seemed to short-circuit him. His face twisted, and before I could react, he slammed his fist against a car window. The glass didn't break, but the sound echoed through the garage. "You'll regret this," he hissed. I just laughed. "Go ahead. Burn every bridge you have left. See how that works out." He threw the envelope at me. Inside were photos, screenshots, private messages, ammunition he'd collected over years of manipulating people, his insurance policy. I took pictures of every single page while he watched, then handed it back to him. "Release whatever you want, but first, look at where your previous schemes got you. The thing about people like Chris, they can't stand when their weapons are turned against them." He tore up the envelope right there in the parking lot, screaming about how we'd all regret this. That tantrum? Someone recorded it. It was all over social media within hours. The final blow came yesterday. Mr. Davis's divorce was finalized, and guess what? She got nothing. The house, the cars, most of their assets, gone to him. Her golden parachute from the company, gone to pay legal fees. Her reputation destroyed. Her future career prospects. Let's just say Google is not her friend anymore. As for Chris, last I heard, he's moving back in with his parents in another state. His social media's gone dark. Those friends who sided with him, they're dealing with their own fallout. Turns out backing the wrong horse has consequences. Marcus tried to apologize yesterday, sent this long message about how he should have been a better friend. I just replied with a screenshot of his old messages supporting Chris. He blocked me. Coward. Taylor's doing damage control too. She's worried those screenshots Chris kept might affect her own career. I almost feel bad. Almost. The awkward encounter started almost immediately. Taylor showed up at my new office with a bouquet of white lilies, the same flowers I'd carried at Chris's birthday party last year. Her hands shook as she set them on my desk. "He manipulated me," she said. "Those texts he showed me were edited. I should have known better." I let her talk, watching as her eyes darted around the room, taking in the window, the new nameplate on my door. When she finished, I handed the flowers back. "I appreciate the thought," I said, "but I don't think we should do this. My new office has a window now, and the view is nothing like the cubicle I left behind." The promotion came 3 months after Chris was fired. HR called it a department restructuring, but I knew the truth. The company was trying to make amends for how long they'd let his behavior slide. My new title came with a 30% raise and an actual door that closes. The first thing I did was take down the generic corporate art and put up a photo of me and my sister at the beach last summer. 6 months after the promotion, I moved into a new apartment. It was closer to work, with hardwood floors and an actual laundry room instead of that sketchy basement shared by all 12 units in my old building. My sister helped me pack. We found a box of Chris's things I'd forgotten about, a sweatshirt he'd left at my place, some books he'd lent me, a framed photo of us at a company picnic. I dropped it all at Goodwill on the way to my new place. The move felt like shedding an old skin. My old apartment had been cramped and dim, with thin walls that let in every argument from the neighbors. My new place was open and bright, with sunlight streaming through the windows in the mornings. It felt like a space where I could breathe again, where I could start over. That's when I met Daniel. He lived 2 floors above me and worked in tech support at a hospital across town. We ran into each other in the elevator, both holding grocery bags from the same store. He joked about my choice of cereal, and I teased him about the 6-pack of energy drinks in his cart. It was normal, easy. Nothing like the intensity of my relationship with Chris, where every conversation felt like a performance. We took things slow. Dinner at a casual Italian place near our building, a movie night where we actually watched the movie instead of pretending to watch while sizing each other up. When he asked about my past relationships, I didn't lie, but I didn't overshare either. "My last boyfriend didn't turn out to be who I thought he was," I said. Daniel just nodded, like he understood there was more to the story but wouldn't push. The boundaries felt different this time. I didn't second-guess myself when I needed space, didn't panic if he didn't text back right away. When he met my sister for the first time, she pulled me aside afterward and said, "You seem calmer with him." That's when I realized how much I'd been walking on eggshells with Chris, even before I knew about the affair. One rainy Sunday while Daniel was at work, I found myself scrolling through LinkedIn. I told myself I was just checking industry updates, but my fingers had a mind of their own. Chris's profile still listed him as seeking opportunities. His profile picture was the same one from when we'd been together, that crisp blue shirt I'd helped him pick out for a presentation. The experience section showed a 3-month gap after his termination, followed by a 6-week stint at a small marketing firm that ended abruptly. No explanation. I thought about the recording in the parking garage, his threats to drag others down with him, wondered if he'd followed through on those. Then I closed the tab and made myself a cup of tea. The rain pattered against my new windows. Thicker glass than in my old apartment, better at keeping out the cold. Looking out at the rain, I thought about how different my life felt now. My old apartment, my old job, even my old relationships. They'd all been like that thin glass, letting in every draft, every storm. Now, I had walls that held firm, windows that kept the cold out. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something stronger, something that could weather whatever came next. Daniel came home later that evening, soaked from the rain but smiling. He set his umbrella by the door and handed me a bag of my favorite takeout. "Thought you might need this," he said. I smiled back, realizing I didn't need it, but I appreciated it anyway. "This will be my last update. Thanks for coming along for the ride. Remember, karma doesn't need your help. Sometimes you just need to step back and let people show their true colors."